23rd, 2021. I'd call the meeting to order and ask for the roll call.
Councilmember Abdalguan.
Here.
Councilmember Barber.
Present.
Councilmember Burke.
Present.
Councilmember Sergo.
Present.
Councilmember Holman.
Present.
Councilmember Townsend.
Present.
Councilmember Wills Scherzer.
Present.
Mayor Trimble.
Present. We have a quorum. Would you all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I know our agenda talks about presentations tonight, but Ms. Hill couldn't be with us this evening, so that will be carried over to another meeting. We have no personal appearances tonight, and so I will turn it over to Mr. Fearborn for staff reports.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Fearborn.
Point of order.
I wasn't
Councilmember
added to the
Berenson
roll
was
call.
left off the roll call, sir.
Pardon me?
I wasn't added to the roll call.
Or added to the roll call? Oh. We shouldn't forget.
Is it because I wore jeans tonight? I'm sorry.
Yeah. We were stunned that you were here early. That's what happened. Yeah. Thank you, John. All right, I'll turn it over to Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, sir. And Brittany is having to fill in as city clerk at the very last minute. Report to the council that Ms. Hill is out ill this evening. I'm sure she's probably watching this meeting as we speak, so we wish her a speedy recovery in her illness. So she is taking over at kind of the last minute, so best of luck to her this evening. With that, I would ask Mr. Krass to make a report for Public Works.
Thank you, Mr. Fearborn, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Just wanted to update the council on a couple of things. Our street preservation program is moving along. I believe they paved Lakeshore today, and they will be working their way north to Granada, Creekmore Pond, and then the last project we'll be doing is North Madison Street. Public Works is also out on 58 highway striping, so if everyone will just slow down and give them a little room, we can get all my guys home safely. And that concludes my report. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Krass. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Krass? All right, turn it back over to Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, Mr. Krass. I would ask Mr. Mustine to make a report for Parks and Recreation.
Thank you, sir. Mayor, members of the council. I've submitted a written report, but I wanted to highlight a couple things. Friday night, we were honored to be able to host the mini mud run. Had to cancel that last year, but this year we had right around just over 300 kids come out and participate in that mud run. So I want to give a special shout out and a thank you to the Optimist Club. They provided a lot of volunteers, and we could not have done that without our volunteers. And specifically that event, we stationed them out there, and those folks were muddy. We even had one at the end of it. He just went in and dove through his obstacle, and just, yeah, it was great. So had a really good time. We want to thank my park staff. Those guys own this event. They build those things, they dig those obstacles, and this is their favorite event of the year, and this is the time we let them shine. So I just wanted to give a thanks to my guys for all they do for that event. Our sports numbers, I provided that in my staff report. For the most part, our numbers are back up, even though, you know, we've had some challenges throughout the year. We see that continues to rise. We're excited to get these athletes out there in our parks, and so looking forward to a fall sports season. And for some really good news tonight, I am happy to make kind of a partial announcement, but we'll do more of an official announcement in about a week or so. But we've received a donation for the Hawks Nest, around $200,000. That is new compared to what we've been able to report to you guys. And then even just today, the Lions Club has donated about $4,700 to us. And so officially, unofficially, at this point right now, we are under $20,000 of being funded of our original $850,000 goal. So that is really exciting. Again, we will continue to move forward. The more you fundraise, the more you get, the more you can do. We understand construction cost and those things. So just because we reach that goal, we're not going to stop, but that does put us on our timeline, which we have been advertising of going out to bid this fall and moving towards construction this time next year. So this was big news, and I was excited to tell you, and we'll report that to the park board tomorrow night, even though they're watching tonight, and I already told them I was going to spill the beans. So that concludes my staff report. Happy to
Great
answer
news,
your
Mr.
questions.
Mustine. Anyone have any questions? Mr. Holman?
That is excellent news. Great report all around. I know when we first talked about the playground at Hawk Ridge Park, and then TB Hanna Station's splash park morphed into what it was, which was all-inclusive. I know at that time there was talk, and we weren't exactly sure on the research, but we thought we were probably going to be one of the few, or maybe the only city in the nation that would have both a all-inclusive playground and an all-inclusive splash park within its boundaries. Do you know any more about that?
The numbers are really about the same. We are officially the only city in the state of Missouri that have 2 all-inclusive playgrounds and a spray ground. That's for sure. Nationally, I don't know the number specifically, but there's only, if there's any, it's around 2 or 3 other cities that would have that amenity of the spray ground. They're just not that common. So to have that plus 2 all-inclusive playgrounds in the same, city limit sign, that puts us on the map for sure.
That's great vision, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? If not, I'll turn it back over to Mr. Fearborn. Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you, Mr. Mustine. I would ask Ms. Harmer to make a report for the Communications Department.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, mayor, members of the council. I wanted to give a quick Arts Commission update. This Thursday, 7 p.m. at the Hawk Ridge Park Amphitheater is our residents' 21st opportunity to get a stamp on their event passport. That's 13 in-person events and 8 opportunities for virtual stamps. I do have a couple that has retired to Raymore that have been to nearly every event, and they've even turned in some digital stamps, and they are loving it, so it makes me really happy to see everyone with their little passport books. So 7 o'clock at Hawk Ridge Park. I know it'll be a bit warm, but with the changing of the seasons, the seating area is in the shade a little bit earlier than normal, and it'll be the Brad Allen Jazz Trio, so jazz at the amphitheater. And also I'm working, trying to finish up the last few pieces of the fall issue of the review and the Parks and Rec program guide. Just want to give you a heads up. I know for the summer issue, it took longer than I expected to get all the reviews in mailboxes in Raymore. I've talked to our printer, and there's paper shortages and USPS shipping delays that are just common now. So while I hope that the review is in your mailboxes the week after Labor Day, it might be a little bit later. So we'll be most likely pushing out a lot of the articles and information digitally first, and hopefully the review doesn't fall too far behind. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Harmer? Thank you very much. Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, Ms. Harmer. Just a reminder to the council that next week is the 5th Monday, and so there will be no meeting unless an emergency comes up. And the following week is, of course, Labor Day, so it will be 3 weeks unless something comes up until the council meets again. That concludes staff reports this evening, sir.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of Mr. Fearborn? Jim, is there any thought to a continuing work session on the budget, potentially on that 5th Monday, since the holiday is followed up next? Because we would miss a work session even further down the road. Might be an opportunity for us to talk about some of the issues that are floating out there on the budget.
I would love to meet on the budget as much as we possibly can, sir. But I will leave that to the council's discretion on whether you want to. There would still be 3 work sessions formally scheduled before final passage of the budget, the one in September and the 2 in October, even without the 5th Monday.
All right. What's the board's feeling? Anybody have any objection to the 5th Monday with the work session on the budget only? Anybody? Everybody good? If you don't mind, we'll go ahead and do that. And
Not all. We'll put it on the agenda, and thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Will that be a 7 o'clock or a 6 o'clock? It'd be a 7 o'clock.
I assume 7 o'clock regular meeting time?
7 o'clock regular
Shouldn't
meeting
need
time.
to meet any earlier than that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you all. I appreciate that. So we have no committee reports. I'll move on to consent agenda. I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
move that we approve consent agenda item A, City Council minutes for August 9th, 2021.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Yes, sir. I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the consent agenda, which is City Council minutes of August 9th. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carries 8-0. Now move on to unfinished business. Could I please have the second reading of Bill 3643 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3643 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending the zoning map from C-3 Regional Commercial District to R3B Apartment Community Residential District, a 21-acre tract of land located east of Dean Avenue, south of Raymore Galleria, in Raymore, Cass County, Missouri.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
I move that we approve the second reading of Bill 3643, rezoning of Watermark.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Yes, sir. I will second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. A motion's been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3643. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Have 7 yes, any noes? 1 no. Motion carries 7-1. Could I please have the second reading of Bill 3644 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3644 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending the zoning map from R1P Single Family Residential Plan District to PUD Planned Unit Development District, a 135-acre tract of land located south of Hubach Hill Road, east of Brook Parkway in Raymore, Cass County, Missouri.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
move that we approve the second reading of Bill 3644, rezoning Sendera.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Yes, sir. I will second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. There's been a motion made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3644. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries 8-0. Could I please have the second reading of Bill 3645 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3645 by title only, an ordinance pursuant to Section 67.110 of the Revised Statutes of Missouri, levying general and special taxes in the City of Raymore, Missouri for the year 2021.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
move that we approve Bill 3645, setting of the 2021 tax levy.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3645. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. We'll now move on to new business. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3647 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3647 by title only, an ordinance approving a plan for a commercial development project.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask Mr. Gress to begin the staff report on this agenda item.
Thank you, sir. Mayor, members of the council. As you all are well aware, Watermark Residential and Thompson Thrift have been pursuing a multifamily residential development here in the city of Raymore for the past several months. As a component to the project, similar to the rezoning request that you all approved this evening, the company has requested the use of the city, the issuance of taxable industrial revenue bonds to help finance certain pieces and components of the project to make it a reality here in the city of Raymore. With me this evening, in addition to the development representatives, are Sid Douglas and Sarah Granath with Gilmore and Bell, who represent the city's ED Legal Counsel. They will be here to make the presentation this evening on behalf of the city relative to the request. Afterwards, the developer is here as well to make some comments relative to their request as well. So with no further ado, I will turn it over to Mr. Sid Douglas.
Okay. Thank you, David.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. As Mr. Gress indicated, the developer is proposing or requesting tax abatement for the development of the apartment project. It's very similar to some of the incentives that were requested for your lofts project that was previously approved. The The idea of what's being expected is 23 years of tax abatement. The abatement varies from 70% for the first 13 years, 50% for the next 5 years, and 30% abatement in the final 5 years. That amounts to about almost $8 million of tax abatement during that 23-year time period of the property. They'll be making a pilot payment that is just about $6,300,000 during that same time period. The overall amount of abatement compared to the overall taxes would be expected if the development did not receive any tax abatement is about 56% of the amount of taxes that would be paid during that time period. The 23 years is expected to be dependent upon the actual beginning of construction of the project. Right now, they expect to acquire the property sometime early in 2022, with construction start later in the year. Some of the apartments will become available for rent in 2023. So some of the buildings will actually go on the tax rolls in 2024, and so that will be the first year expected for the tax abatement. If it is deferred because of all kinds of circumstances, the renewal of COVID or any other kind of things, that could potentially slide, but that's currently the plan for the development and the expectation. Also expected or requested is sales tax exemption on the purchase of the construction materials related to the project. That is expected to result in about another $760,000 tax benefit for the sales tax exemption, but that's mostly for sales that would be purchased out of state, and it's the use tax exemption. For use taxes, it would be paid to the state and the county. The local impact of that is very nominal, and the overall benefit, very little is expected to be purchased locally, and that would have been another $15,000 based on expected construction purchases. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Douglas, at this time? Thank you, Mr. Douglas.
Thank you.
Mr. Gress or Mr. Fearborn? Will we hear from the applicant next?
The applicant next,
Okay.
sir.
Right.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
There is a presentation the applicant has, so I will broadcast that to your
Okay,
computers.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Good evening. I'm Chris Alexander with Watermark Residential. I'm at 111 Monument Circle, Suite 1500, Indianapolis, Indiana. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thanks for having us here tonight, and thank you for considering our request. What I wanted to do was just reiterate some of the benefits from our view we think this project will bring to the community. So as a reminder, this will be a true Class A luxury property. This development will offer an extensive amenity package. I've got some images here that I want to show you as I'm sort of talking through them. This will be a 3-story project. We call it the Classic. From an exterior standpoint, we'll have all enclosed stairwells. That means no long corridors. We'll have direct access to pods of units within the buildings. Every unit will have a balcony or walkout porch. Some first floor units will have walkouts as well with a fence. Exteriors are a combination of wood siding, a hardy siding, board and batten, and decorative stone accents. Wanted to just show you a few of the images here. Am I pointing at the right thing here?
The camera's above you, behind you just a little bit. Kind
Back
of
this
point.
way.
There you go. There you go.
Okay. So here are a few just representative images of those features that I just mentioned. These will be very similar in terms of product and style, minus the palm trees we will provide.
Darn.
We'll do our best, but I don't know that we can do that one. Quickly, interiors. So the interiors are spacious, open floor plans. Every unit has 9-foot ceilings, large windows, 2-inch faux wood blinds. Kitchens will have center islands, stainless steel appliances, modern plumbing fixtures, quartz countertops are our standard. Designer light fixtures and puck lights, and wood-inspired luxury vinyl plank flooring. In the bathrooms, you'll see framed mirrors, showers with glass doors, modern plumbing fixtures, as I mentioned earlier. And every unit will have a full-size washer and dryer in its own dedicated space. You won't walk into a walk-in closet. There'll be a dedicated space for that. In terms of the community amenities, you'll see a beautiful community clubhouse, lots of TVs, kitchen and gathering spaces, Starbucks coffee bar. Typical open space will have lots of light and very inviting gathering space for our residents. They'll overlook the resort-style pool, images that you've seen there. There'll be plenty of seating in that pool area. And I'll just kind of scan through some of the images of, again, examples that we've done in other communities. Oh, didn't want to see that yet. We will have a resort, as I said, resort-style amenities around that pool, including cabanas, water features, grills, and fire pits. In terms of the workout area, you'll see a 24-hour fitness center. Honestly, it rivals what you'll see in a upper-scale fitness center that you'll see in a community like a Lifetime Fitness. You'll have high-end fitness equipment, and that's all available to our residents in a 24-hour basis. Again, this is just sort of a conceptual rendering of the exterior as we've shown before, and this is a site plan. Just in terms of, you know, what's going on with our portfolio and what we would expect here in terms of performance. Currently, we have 3,400 units in lease-up nationally right now. That's in different communities across the country. That's 17 different properties. All of them have finished or are in the process of finishing construction over the last 12 months. And in those units, and we call them in lease-up, we're currently at 36% occupancy. So we don't have all of our units yet. We're still delivering a lot of them. And that 36% might not sound a lot, but in our world, that is a very good leasing pace. In fact, we're 123% of our pro forma right now on those 17 properties. That includes our North Kansas City property that some of you may be familiar with, that is actually outperforming pro forma as well. We're at 32% occupancy there, and we just delivered our first units at the end of May. So essentially, we've had it for less than 3 months, and we've had an average of 20 move-ins per month. So we're at about 64 units right now occupied in that project, which is about 260 total units. I just give you some of those statistics to show you that, you know, this product and the trends that we're seeing, we believe, and particularly with this community, will deliver a strong leasing pace. And we've got a portfolio of stabilized properties. Those are now properties that we classify as stabilized because they're 92% or greater leased. Occupancy there is actually at 96.7% and 130% of plan. One thing I'll mention too, we do have a preferred tenant program, and I'll use Kansas City, North Kansas City as an example, where there we have collaborated with the Chamber of Commerce. Every member of the Chamber of Commerce, if they have an employee that comes to us, we will give them a $300 credit off the bat. So you'll typically have an application fee of $50, and you'll have a $150 fee, which is an administration fee to run credit and so forth. That costs about $200. If they pass that and they move into a lease, there's another $100 that they can apply to their lease going forward. And we would expect to do that here as well. We can work with you on who the right group is to, you know, identify who those users would be. But that also includes first responders. So we want to work with, you know, police, fire, EMS, and typically those types of folks are the ones that we definitely want to bring into the program as, again, preferred tenants. So I just put this up here as the watermark difference, and again, it just sort of goes through all of the different features that I mentioned. But, you know, on behalf of Watermark, I want to thank you for considering this and us for the Chapter 100. Our team has stated throughout this that here is the project we're going to deliver for you. We're not going to come back to you and ask to reduce the scope. We're not going to ask to cut what we've provided to you. This is the product standard that we provide, and that's what we intend to provide here in Raymore. So again, we thank you for the opportunity to consider this. We hope that you will also believe that this product is worthy of your city and think that it will be a good addition. So thank you very much, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Anybody have any questions? Mr. Holman? Sir? Sorry.
Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Linville, and you gave us quite a bit of background last time you were before us. Company's been in business for a while. You put in a number of these. I'm sure with your background and experience, you've heard the term within economic development that retail follows rooftops. Have you built these projects where there is undeveloped land, either adjacent to or in the nearby area? And if so, did you see trends for that nearby land after your unit went in?
We will tend to follow retail, and that's a good bit of why we really like this site. And if you look at a lot of our developments around the country, you'll see us located in close proximity to Sam's Clubs and large grocers. Our users obviously are shoppers there, and they want to have quick access to those. I don't have exact data for you on what happens around it, but I can tell you and use an example of a project that we just started construction on. And it's in Lyon Township, Michigan. They had searched for 20 years with this development. It's in an area they consider to be their downtown for more big box type of development, big box retail. Obviously, everyone knows the retail world has changed, and their thoughts changed that we want to bring people to the retail. We want to add walkability to this development. And so their belief, and ours too, and there are remaining retail lots that will be left. There were some restaurant outlots and things like that that will sit outside. As soon as we agreed with the city on the deal and moved forward, a large car dealership signed up and went right across the street. And now there's lots of access for them to some of these retailers for the pads that I mentioned that are available. So I think anecdotally, I can tell you that bringing that kind of concentration and density to an area like that where the residents are actually going to be able to walk literally out their front door or across the street to be able to access the retail amenities will attract more. So
thank you,
hope
sir.
that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Ms. Abdelwood, did you have a question?
I did. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just curious, of your other properties, roughly what percentage do you have some sort of tax abatement on, and what percentage are a Chapter 100 or similar deals to this?
We've done it in the past. I wouldn't say that it's a majority of our portfolio, but in certain cases we have done similar, I will say, type of arrangements. We have a project in Fishers, Indiana that we completed recently. It's called The Yard. And they wanted to bring density. So they agreed to a bond basically where we had $10 million to be able to build a parking garage that would benefit both the apartment development that would be built, some retail that was going to be built there as well, and provide public parking. So that's an example of it. Every deal is different. But in an application like this where we look at it and we see, okay, there is a gap for us, and certainly with it being available, it made a lot of sense.
You just some follow-up?
Didn't quite answer the question.
Yeah.
Could just a rough percentage, what percentage of your projects have some sort of tax abatement?
Rough percentage would be probably 5%, 5 to 10%.
Mr. Berenson, did you have some?
Yeah, I kind of had the same question. Any properties locally here in the Midwest or in this region that have had any kind of tax abatement?
Yeah, the Fishers one I mentioned is our most recent, and I can give you that example for sure.
Mr. Townsend?
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the presentation. And could you refresh my memory on your mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom? What percentage of that?
Sure, yeah. So we're at 40% one beds, 52% twos, and 8% threes. That translates to 120 ones, 156 twos, and 24 threes.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions of the applicant? Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate you. Anything else from Mr. Fearborn or Mr. Gress on this?
Mr. Grass, anything?
That would conclude our staff report.
Okay.
Happy to answer any questions that the council has.
Okay, any questions of Mr. Gress at this time? Thank you, sir. If not, I'll open the floor to any taxing jurisdiction that wishes to comment on the Chapter 100 request. Ask you to state your name and address for the record and what capacity you are providing the information. Is your microphone on, sir?
So many rules.
I know, right?
I'll start again. Mayor and members of the City Council, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Mike Slagle. I'm the Superintendent of Schools for the Raymore Peculiar School District. And I know the first thing on your mind, the first question you want to ask me is how the first day of school go today. And I will please report, Mr. Burke, 6,300 students made their way to our campuses very successfully today. We had a pretty good first day of school, so thank you. I come before you tonight to speak on behalf of the RAPEC Board of Education in opposition to the Chapter 100 funding plan for the Watermark development. I want to be clear about the district's opposition to this plan. We are in opposition to the funding plan for the development and take no position on the development plan itself. The appropriateness of the development plan is not an area the RAPEC board wishes to engage in, and from looking at the slideshow, it looks like a fantastic project by all means. However, the funding plan for the development has a direct impact on the school district, and that is the reason for our opposition to the funding plan tonight. But before I outline the reasons for our opposition, I want to commend city staff on their help and work in getting us the information we need to help us understand a very complex piece of funding opportunity here for the council and both for the developer. Thank you for that assistance. We do appreciate that. Our opposition to the funding plan is based on three primary funding issues. One, the overall opportunity loss to the school district is close to $5 million over the life of this project. In a time where our community continues to grow and pressures will be placed on local revenue to keep pace with that growth, losing any type of opportunity for operational revenue is a big deal and is not something we can readily support. Two, some may make the argument that without this development, an empty piece of ground will sit empty, so something is better than nothing. We reject that argument based on the cost analysis that the city staff has helped us with. We have three scenarios of how many students we could expect from a development such as Watermark. These analyses are done by looking at only the 2- and 3-bedroom units that was recently proposed to us. One scenario presents a very modest student enrollment count of 9 students per 100 apartment units. This is based on an average count of students in the Midwest region of similar type developments. A second scenario uses a slightly more aggressive count of 11 students per 100 units given by a national average. A third scenario is what we believe to be the most likely scenario, and that's based on our current experience here in the RAPEC School District, specifically in Raymore, and that is 17.5 students per 100 units. The big takeaway here is that for all of these, under all these scenarios, the cost-benefit analysis of the RAPEC School District is far less than 1, meaning the development will cost us more in terms of meeting student needs than the revenue gained by the project after the Chapter 100 financing plan. For example, using the Midwest scenario of 9 students per 100 units, there's 12% more cost to the district than revenue provided, an expense exceeding revenue calculation of over $500,000 over the life of the project, and a cost-benefit analysis of 0.89. And again, anything below 1 is a net loss to the person looking at the cost-benefit analysis. Using what we think is the most likely scenario and the one based on our experiences, there's 94% more cost to the district than revenue provided, an expense exceeding revenue calculation of $4.4 million over the life of the project, and a cost-benefit analysis of 0.51. Now, the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. right? It's not going to be one of those extremes. It's probably be somewhere in the middle. The fact of the matter is, in all the cases, this is not a case of something is better than nothing. In all the cases, under the current Chapter 100 financing plan proposed, this something results in a net negative fiscal impact to the school district, and that is one of the reasons we oppose the financing proposal. Lastly is the issue of tax fairness. Our analysis indicates that we have several developments in the school district that produce few, if any, school children. Yet these areas participate fully in the tax rate of the Ray-Pec School District. We feel that a public good, such as a school district, needs to be supported by all members of the public in order to be beneficial, both now and in the future, to the students who will call our school district home. Once again, thank you for allowing us to speak tonight. I know this is a complex issue, and I do not take our relationship or friendship for granted whatsoever. We are great partners and want to continue to be great partners. Felt it was important tonight for you to listen to our concerns.
Thank you, sir. I did have a follow-up, Mr. Zur.
Yep. Dr. Slagle, just real quickly,
Yes, sir.
For clarification of the record here, from the perspective of the school district, are you then the identified authorized representative of the district for commenting this evening?
I am.
Okay. And then as a second one, which will have maybe a two-part question to it, and is this an adopted policy of the school board at this time? And if so, is that as to all future incentive applications or just specifically to this particular application?
There is no official policy on record. This is one that we have taken just as a singleton, to answer your question.
Was that a consensus of the school board? I mean,
Yes.
Somebody made a recommendation or made a motion? And
There was
vote?
no formal vote taken in discussion in a work session. There was directive given to me to make these comments.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely.
I'm going to get into Q&A, but
okay, I'm sorry.
but
I thought we were answering a question. Sorry.
that was just for clarification purposes. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, sir.
Yes, Ms. York is here tonight as well from the school
Okay.
board to talk.
All right. Thank you.
I always have to lower the microphone. Good evening. My name is Kim York. As many of you know, I've served on the Ray-Pec School Board for almost 12 years now. And thank you all for allowing us to speak tonight. And also thank you for all the analysis and number crunching that has gone into determining the impact of this Chapter 1 tax abatement on all the various taxing entities. Mr. Fearborn and Mr. Gress have both spent time helping me understand the numbers. I like to crunch numbers as well, and this has been an impressive set of analysis that's been put together. I'm grateful that our city is looking at ways to ensure that we continue to grow, and I'm especially grateful for the consideration that you all are giving to the school district. I understand that when running the numbers, there was a lot of thought about how to structure this to best support the school district. Dr. Slagle did, represent to you all tonight that we do have concerns about this. I'm going to speak in terms of if the project is approved and goes forward. I would like to ask the city to consider the impact of the Chapter 100 developments over time. Currently, there are 2 residential Chapter 100 projects, assuming this one is passed, the Loft, which is just now opening, and Watermark. We have estimates of the impact of these, but we won't have actual data on these for 2 to 3 years. I understand the city might look at additional Chapter 100 residential projects down the road if growth supports them. And tonight I'd like to ask the city to keep in mind the cumulative effect of Chapter 100 residential developments as more are added. One project, as we've seen in the estimates with the low numbers to the high numbers, could cost the school district in actual money out of pocket, expenses exceeding revenues, $500,000 to $4.4 million over the 23 years. When it comes to our reserves, that's actually $1 million to over $4 million of depleting our reserves over that time. Either that or cutting supplies, services, or teachers when we have to be adding teachers. And that's just one project. Double that because, as I said, there might be 2 if this one passes. And if we end up with 3 or 4 or 5 over the next 5 to 10 years, those numbers are certainly unsustainable by the district. I did some quick math tonight after I talked to Mr. Gress, so he hasn't vetted my numbers, but I'll give them to you. If we did, I just staggered and said assumed there were 5 projects staggered every 2 to 3 years. The school district would deplete our reserves by $4 million using the low end estimates, or 20 million on the high end within 15 to 30 years. Our reserves only ran about 15 to 18 million, so 4 million is unsustainable and 20 million obviously can't be done. Of course we wouldn't be able to do that, so we would have to ask taxpayers for a levy increase, and we would be asking our citizens to increase their taxes to cover the apartment abatements on the Chapter 100s if we ended up with that many staggered over time. And I don't know what the city's plans are. I just want to be on record to ask you to consider that cumulative effect and how dramatic it can be for the school district. So again, if you could please keep that in mind, and thank you very much for your time, and especially thank you for keeping us in mind and letting us have input on this process.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Gress, do you have anything to add to that particular statements levied by the school district?
Thank you. And thank you for your comments. Very much appreciated. Before I take a chance to respond to any of those specifically, Dr. Schlegel spoke about the 3 different scenarios that city staff contemplated. And I think in our conversations back and forth, we were all in agreement on what these numbers are in terms of the revenues that the school district and the city and any of the jurisdictions would receive. I think the only unknown that's in the room is just the simple question of how many kids are going to live in this development or the lofts or the venue. And that is just truly the unknown number, and time will tell what that number is. I think staff has a much more conservative number than some of the other folks in this room, and that's okay. But at the end of the day, I'm thankful for the opportunity to work with the school district and go through some of these numbers in detail so that they're aware of what is before you all this evening, and they can make the informed decisions that they are here to do. Any questions specifically of the council, I'm happy to answer, but I appreciate the comments and feedback.
Thank you, Mr. Gress. Any questions, Mr. Gress? Yes, Mr. Berenson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Gress, does the city take a position on this? And is the city neutral on this project? Are they supporting the project? Where does the city stand on this?
City recommends approval.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else have anything at this time? Mr. Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, read the packet, and there's, counting Raymore, there's 13 taxing districts that are involved in this. And as far as my desk, I didn't see any paperwork or anything from any other taxing districts. Did we get anything or that we haven't seen?
Correct. In addition to the school district, we did have specific conversations with South Metro right across the street, just to key them in with what was going on. We've also had some conversations at the county level as well in terms of the project. But other than those entities, we have had no specific conversations with any other entity. But as you'll note in your packet, each taxing jurisdiction in the city of Raymore did receive notice of their request this evening.
Okay, thank you, sir. Yes, Ms. Abdelwad.
Just a little more information about those conversations. Were they informational or were they expressing opposition to the project?
Just informational.
Anyone else? All right. Thank you, Mr. Gress.
Thank you.
If I could follow up on that question too. We had very good conversations with the school district, and as everybody has kind of sat around the table, we all came to an agreement on, because when we came before you tonight, I think the school district, Dr. Schlegel, Dr. Pettengill, staff wanted to make sure that the council understood. We agree, there is fundamental agreement on all of the numbers that are in the cost-benefit analysis. The only unknown, as has been stated, is how many children are we talking about?
Well, and one of the things that I've recognized throughout the course of this is that the concern about the lofts has turned out, from our perspective, from the research that we've done, is that because there are so many studio and one-bedroom apartments, the realization is that there's probably less likely of loss of funding there for the district as there is for overall funding. So this really, that's not a project they should be concerned about. I could understand their concern about this particular project, but from a micro versus macro consensus, I think to Mr. Holman's point and question to Chris about the project, and if it attracts other economic development. From our perspective, we believe that a project like that would in fact create commercial and economic development that would not necessarily cause a burden for the school district, but would actually add to the funding and mechanisms that are in place. So from an overarching perspective, from a mayoral perspective, I don't see it as big a concern as the school board does, as the school district does, but I do believe that I don't disagree with their numbers here, but from an overall perspective, I'm not potentially not as concerned as they are about future development of this nature. So anyway, with that said, I would open it up for any other discussion or additional questions from the group here. Mr. Holman.
Thank you. Mr. Fearborn, I know I'm not absolute 100% sure on funding that the school district receives. Obviously, they receive property tax funding, and then isn't there some formula from the federal or state government where they receive money per student? I know you have a great background in school finance, being from Hickman Mills. Could you kind of give us a 101 on school finance and where that money all comes from?
Let's look in the micro at from the standpoint. Let's talk about two things. School districts are funded at the state level using the foundation formula for the state. The simplistic form of that would be to say the state determines by number of students, here is what, and this is real simplistic. It's much more complex than this. But they say school districts should get this much money based on their student population and the cost per student. And then they proceed to then take away from that number so that at the state level you're not funded by that because you are creating local effort and locally paying a property tax, locally paying a pilot. Those get reduced from the responsibility of the state to fund you up. Now, again, there are complications in that. In 2004, total assessed valuations for the school district were set in place. The operating levy that was in place in 2004 is frozen, so any growth over and above that is not actually reduced from the foundation formula. If I say anything more than that, I'm going to be getting out into gray areas but that's a real simplistic way of looking at it. Certainly the majority of the funding that a school district receives at the local level is through assessed valuations and the property tax. They do receive sales tax. 1% of the state of Missouri sales tax is sales tax statewide is pooled at the state level, and then through Proposition C money, those are distributed to the school districts based on average weighted daily attendance of the school district. So student population goes up wherever that population is coming from, average daily attendance weighted goes up, so they receive a little bit more funding. I believe the superintendent and I were actually off by about $2 on the two different calculations on that amount. And I believe that in Raymore Peculiar School District, the entirety of that money actually goes into, we have funds, the school district has public funds, that is actually all deposited, I believe, into the teacher's fund, directly for the expenses associated with boots on the ground. So just a couple of different aspects. I hope that answers your question, sir.
I thought it was a little more complex than just real estate taxes.
It's a lot more complex, and it makes folks like Dr. Schlegel hit his head against the table all day
Yes,
long.
sir. Thank you.
Mr. Townsend.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I probably should have asked this question of Dr. Schlegel earlier, staff or anyone. And it's in relation to Mr. Zer's question. How many taxing jurisdictions within the Ray-Pec School District have you reviewed or received comment on similar Chapter 100s? And how many did you oppose? either yourself or any of the school board members who would like to speak to that. Just curious to know how many of the how many taxing jurisdictions are in the school district, and how many are you aware of, I know you're new to the district, that you have had to review Chapter 100 considerations and have opposed those?
If I understand the question correctly, this is the first one that I have been on the ground to oppose. I believe there was a letter placed on file for the lofts, if I remember my history correctly of when I came on board, a letter of concern for that particular project there. As far as a question about taxing entities in the Ray-Pec School District, I'd have to do some research on that. I do not know. There was a TIF project in Peculiar recently that we took no position on because it was a grocery store, not a student provider or a multiplier. So we took no position on that one, but we did take a position on the lofts with a letter to council and here tonight.
And my last question, I was doing a little research on with the Missouri Department of Education, and the figure that's out there is a cost per student to operate in the district, and you can even drill down to the individual schools. If memory serves correct, I think it was like $1,900, but you would know that more than I would. What is the cost per student? And I couldn't figure out what is included in that. Does that include teachers, or that's just to turn the lights on, supply with facilities and all that? Kind of.
No, the way that number is calculated, I believe the number for Ray-Pec is 9816.
Okay.
And the way that is calculated is taking a look at our entire operational budget, dividing by the number of students, and you get a cost per student.
Okay.
So that includes teachers, operating costs, your fixed costs such as transportation, some of your variable costs such as your utilities, those types of things are all included in that number.
So using that number multiplied by the examples you gave today with the per 100 students, is it as simple as that, multiplying that cost per student to come up with a potential annual increase?
Yes, that's how we approach that. I think the assumptions that Mr. Gress put into this was using that as a base, inflating that cost over 2% per year, then looking at and weighing that against the revenue that was going to be created by this development.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Absolutely.
Well, I wasn't going to open that door, but does somebody else have a question? Do you have a question for the superintendent or of staff? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Fairborn, I believe that I read, maybe in this packet, but somewhere I've read recently that it was probably the budget. In the years that you've been here as the city manager instead of the assistant city manager, I believe that I read that, and that's pretty coincide with my career here as well. I believe the assessed valuation of Raymore went from under 200 million to 400 million in the less than 6 years. Is that correct? I'm pretty sure it is.
Quick.
Sorry to put you on the spot with a huge notebook.
I was really hoping that Miss Williams was
Lisa
going to be
says
in the
you have a
back
budget
nodding
book.
at me that she knew it.
Oh, is it?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. I think it might be in the appendix. I can get to it. Capital funds.
That is correct. I've got it right here.
Oh, thank you, sir.
In 2015, it was, actually, I was off a little bit. In 2015, it says 283 million, and now it's 405 million, almost 406 million.
That's correct, sir.
Thank you. So as follow up to that, so as we grow, that's going to provide more taxes to all jurisdictions, including the school district.
That is correct, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody else have anything? Mr. Barber?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate the comments made by the school board and school board president, but it did make a comment that kind of stuck with me. We know there's a lot of guesstimations. In my business, we call it swag, and I won't tell you what that stands for, but there's a lot of stuff thrown around, what ifs. A lot of these that we're looking at assume that all these people that are moving in are going to be out-of-towners. And I'm sure that's not going to be the case. And if there's children that come in these communities, there are going to be some that are already in the district. So it's not going to be any impact there. But the statement was made when these kind of developments do spur commercial development. And commercial development funds the district without putting any burden on the district. And so it's kind of, you know, you gotta make some investments to get some investments. And I personally think this is an investment in Raymore that will pay dividends in the long run. I think the school district will reap the benefits in the future from it.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? If there's nothing further, I will go ahead and entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
I move that we approve the first reading of Bill 3647, Watermark Chapter 100 request.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Yes, sir. I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3647. Any further discussion? Mr. Holman.
I concur with Councilmember Barber's comments. I think that this is probably an investment in our future. We know that, or anticipate, retail development near that area to the south and slightly to the west along 49, and I think this will help spur that growth as well as other current lots and areas that are undeveloped or unoccupied at this time. So I think that the school district will pick up some funds without they'll receive funds based on that without incurring additional burden of students.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I also concur with my colleagues in the questions that was asked this evening and the comments that were given to those. I do feel that this project would add a defined benefit to the community. One, it answers one of the things that we've been challenging our staff to do and that our residents have asked us to do is get more retail in the area so that we can kind of keep some of those sales tax revenues here as our budget depicts that sales tax is the driving revenue and not property tax. This particular property and this particular project, as our economic developer has told us, restaurants and other retailers says we need more rooftops. We need more various different types of rooftops, not just single family. Employers like the Van Trust and others needed some, have said that there's some options that are needed for their employees in this particular project and others that we've considered before do that. So this process, even though the consideration this evening is for the Chapter 100 over 23 years, the agenda item that we approved earlier for the single-family 165-acre Sendera project, 35 acres, 135 acres, for those lots are single-family homes that aren't abated, that as those are built out will add property value, assessed value to the school district as well, including others over the life of this project. So I believe this is a benefit to the community. It may not return the numbers up front as far as the variable that we spoke to earlier about how many are going to have school-aged children in these units. Same could be said for the single-family homes. How many of those are going to have school-aged children in them? Studies that the school districts has given us access to as a general public have proven that apartments aren't necessarily the largest generator of school-age students. Single families is the one that does that. So I'm in agreement with this particular project and the funding mechanism because it's to the benefit of the community and it's going to benefit the school district as a whole as well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Mr. Circo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree back with my council members here. Yeah, when you're talking about these apartments, 60% will be 2 or 3 bedroom. There's probably a better chance, a higher quality of these will have children with them. They want to come to the area. They love the Ray Peck School District. It's always talked about all around our communities and our area, the Kansas City. By bringing in these bigger businesses, what we've talked for years, like Mr. Townsend said, you have to have the rooftops that people and business will follow. And we have all that area over there for commercialism. But I think when you see the new people coming in down here off the industrial park, they're going to bring a lot of workers. nice salaries. People need places to live. They want a place. They don't want to buy homes right away. They want to come in and rent. These are things they would be looking for with their children. And we need those kind of things. We need those kind of complexes, like you said, with the apartments, to bring these kids in, and the taxation that'll bring, and they'll bring the commercialism, which again is a plus for the school district as we grow. And I think the numbers will be hopefully probably larger than what's estimated on these apartments, because they're going to be walking distance from some restaurants and stuff. People like that. They'll come in here and have the amenities of that with the pool and the different things, but that's what they're coming here for. So it gives us a nice step up. The city's done very well with that. We've done it for years, looking at these projects, why we want them, why they're coming, and they're in high demand. So families are coming, families, not just single people or just couples, but people with families are wanting to come to Raymore. And this is, I think, again, a good project and a good thing with my council members. I agree.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Well, as a final comment, I agree with my fellow council members that this is a good project. We don't look just to the ends of our noses. We do look past that, and we see that these projects do bring great attention to our organization, to our community, I mean. And we don't look at them with just throw the baby out with the bathwater kind of perspective. We're very conservative about how this city moves forward. We've been very conservative in the past. If you talk to our former TIF commission members or the present day members, which I haven't met in a while, but if you talk to them, you'll see that there's always a conservative air to our movement forward when we're taking anything like this into consideration as it relates to incentivizations. And we know that other communities around us have been a little more risky in their undertaking with regard to incentivizations. We've always prided ourselves in being very conservative, falling within the policy that we've established for ourselves. And again, we fall within that same policy that we've established to ensure the movement forward is a fair way of growing our community and fair to the taxing entities that are here in our city. With that said, if there's no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion? 7 yes, opposed. 7 yes, 1 opposition. Motion carries. Could I please have the reading of Resolution 2134 by title only?
Resolution 21-34 by title only, a resolution of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending the schedule of fees.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask Ms. Williams to make a staff report on this agenda item.
Thank you, sir. I'll bring my budget book in from now on. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Before you this evening is a resolution amending the schedule of fees for our fiscal year 22, which will begin on November 1st. Moving in the order of our schedule of fees, the License Tax Review Committee met in July and recommends increasing the excise tax per trip by the rate of the Construction Cost Index as of January 2021. That rate is 2.06%. The water and sewer section includes increases to the tap fees, also related to the Construction Cost Index of 2.06%, as well as increasing the meter supply fee to the cost of purchase. Staff met with council at a work session back in July regarding the cost of service water and sewer rate model. The adjustments to the water and sewer rates before you are in the schedule of fees. The farmers market booth space rental was adjusted to be the same for all rentals. Under the animal shelter fees, pet licenses were removed. And in the Parks and Recreation section, it includes additional fees for new spaces available for rentals, including the ice rink and skates, as well as a flag football field for tournament rentals. That concludes staff report.
Thank you. Any questions of staff? Appreciate it. This requires a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing at this time. If anybody would like to address the council on this particular topic, please step forward, state your name and address for the record, and try to keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. See no one coming forward. I'll close the public hearing at this time, and I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Townsend.
I move that we approve, I move Resolution 2134, amending the schedule of fees.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion, sir.
Motion has been made and seconded to adopt Resolution 21-34. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Our last item is, could I please have the first reading of Bill 3646 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3646 by title only, an ordinance authorizing and directing the issuance, sale, and delivery of $9 million principal amount of general obligation bonds, Series 2021 of the City of Raymore, Missouri, and authorizing certain other documents and actions by the city.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, sir. I would ask Mr. Sid Douglas to make a staff report on this agenda item.
Back again, Mayor, members of the council. This is the second installment of the bonds that were authorized last April. We've issued $8,990,000 principal amount of what was authorized previously. We've issued just under $7 million for streets and $2 million of park authorization. This installment will authorize another $5 million for roads, and the balance of the park improvement money, so it'll be $3,930,000. There will be $5,515,000 that will still remain to be done for road projects, and it's expected that you'll see the authorization for those bonds sometime in 2022. Good news is that the city's gone through a rating evaluation process with Moody's. They were able to confirm your AA2 rating, which is outstanding. The last implementation of your bond issue was very good interest rates, and although I'm not your financial advisor, the words from Mr. Goffey is that the markets remain relatively good, and it's a good opportunity to try to access the capital markets to fund these projects. You do have a first reading of the ordinance, and if you've looked at the ordinance in any detail, you'll notice that there are some blanks in the ordinance. The sale is expected to be conducted at 10:30 on September 13th. At that time, later in that day, we will present the final results of the bond sale and include the details. We'll have the specific principal amounts and interest rates that were achieved at the sale, and they'll be available for approval or consideration for approval that evening. We will include both the clean and marked version of the ordinance, so you'll see any changes that are made from what's presented from this first reading that will incorporate those final pricing terms. I don't have anything else that would conclude my comments, so if you've got any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Thank you, Sid. Yes, Mr. Holman.
Good news, sir. Thank you. I was just curious, I think we all are, how much blood or how many organs will Mr. Fuhrborn have to donate before we get our AAA rating? And on a more serious note, I want to say that we greatly appreciate your assistance. As the city grows, we find more and more demand for your services, and it's provided basically a seamless transition from preparing for the election, success in the election, and then the financial transactions that take place afterwards. And you've been here every time, sat through every meeting very patiently, and I, for one, greatly appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Well, we're glad to help the city. It does help tremendously. You've got a great staff that's very organized and present a lot of good information and is well prepared. So it's an honor to be able to work with a very dedicated and organized group like that. So,
thank you, sir. Anyone else?
You got extra organs to donate, Mr. Fuhrborn?
Several of the council members probably saw me roll my eyes at the AA2. As you know, before I leave, I will get us to AA1. Darn that school district growing like this with us, because the one thing we have is what's called overlapping debt, and you've heard me talk about it. And when you have as much overlap, we are a victim of our success.
Thank you. There's no further questions. I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Townsend.
I move that we approve Bill 3646, General Obligation Series 2021 Bond Issue.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Yes, sir. I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3646. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. We're now into the public comment section of our agenda. If anyone from the public would like to address the council at this time, please step forward, state your name and address for the record, and try to keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. I see no one coming forward. In fact, they're retreating. So, well, move on to Mayor Council communication. I'll start with Mr. Barber tonight. Mr. Barber.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to commend our Parks and Rec Director, Mr. Mustine. Driving to my office this morning, I looked over at the splash park, and that water looks 40 feet high. And that was, I won't tell you what time I went to the office, but it was working. And even with school in place, looked like the families were enjoying that. And fantastic. You called it good news, but I call it great news on the Hawk Ridge, Hawk's Nest all-inclusive playground. That is meeting, which doesn't surprise me, it's meeting expectations and more. And I like your attitude. Let's get more than we asked for and do more than we said we would do on that project. And I'm excited for that moving forward. I was going to say, too, I'm okay with the work session on the 5th Monday to work on the budget.
Okay, great. Mr. Holman.
Thank you, sir. I would concur with Councilmember Barber's comments about the news about Hawk Ridge Park and the activities being undertaken by the Parks Department. It's great news all around for everybody in the city, and staff's doing a fantastic job. Thank you, sir. I would take this moment to congratulate this body. We have shown over the past 6 months, if not going back further, that we are much in favor of managed, well-managed growth within this city. This growth is going to come to this city. If we manage it well, it will pay great dividends for us. It has so far, and it will continue to do so even more bountiful, I believe. With that comes fear on the part of some people that change may affect us in a way we don't like it. I like to take the optimistic view that I think it's going to be good for us. It's going to be good for everybody around, our citizens. I'm glad the school district was here tonight to tell us kind of what they thought about it. And their success is our success, I believe. And I think that they will eventually reap benefits out of this project as well. Thank you, sir.
Yep, thank you. Ms. Abdelgawad.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to take a brief opportunity to thank city staff for all the work that you guys do for us. We had several quite complicated things on our agenda tonight, and because you are so clear in your communication and give us just enough information but not an overwhelming amount of information, we luckily have the opportunity to read through that, understand that. We know you're always available for questions should we want to ask questions on a topic before the meetings, but just thank you so much to all the city staff. I know I'm looking at Mr. Fearborn, but I know it's a group effort putting this packet together for us, and you guys have mastered that, giving us just the right information, making it easy for us to read and understand, and so thank you for that.
Mr. Berenson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will start off with the Watermark presentation. First of all, you know, they allowed us to tour that facility, and it was a very impressive facility, and they did a lot of things that I was very happy to see. I'd like to commend my colleagues tonight. I know that I voted differently than all of you, but I think you're all passionate about this. I feel like you all showed up with research, and you studied and did your background on this. And frankly, I hope that I'm wrong, and I hope that you're all right. I feel like 95% of the, you know, if he tells me that 5% of the applicants receive some sort of a tax incentive, then that tells me that 95% of them didn't need it. What I wonder is, what is it about Raymore that we're looped into that other 5% and not the 95% that we needed to do this? So that's why I took the stand on that. At the same time, the vote's done. It's water under the bridge. I hope it's a successful project, and I hope we're right. I hope that it does spur economic development, but I thought that I owed an explanation for my no vote on that. I also believe that property, I think we don't know what the future is going to hold. We know that property's been vacant for several years. And I know there's not a lot of hope that we're going to get a large commercial development there. I really wish that we could hold on to that a little longer and try to maybe maximize that space for commercial development. But again, we don't know what the future's going to hold. We know what the past has done, and it hasn't been successful. And so, again, I want to thank you all for your compassion and your votes on that, even though they were different. And I'll end on a happier note. On the mini mud run, I got to go out there and watch my daughter. I was telling Nathan, my kid is that one that if she gets a drop of water on her shirt, she has to change it immediately. So this was out of her comfort zone, but it was great to watch her run through the mud. And there were a lot of kids there running several times. I mean, cool to see. I wish I could have jumped in the mud myself too, but a very well-run event. Thank you for the Parks Department and the Optimist Club for their volunteers, and look forward to seeing that again in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to the council. Thank you to Mr. Barrington for your comments. Well received. I appreciate that. A little bit of information to think on and chew on. Also to Mr. Mustine, thank you for the comments on the Optimist Club and all the volunteers, everyone that participated. That was a good thing to see. I didn't get out there. I've played in the mud enough in the Marines, so I didn't necessarily need to do that again. But it was good to see. It was good to see everyone to come out and support that and the numbers that you had. I was surprised to see in the staff report the thermometer and how we're almost there. It's excellent to see them interested to hear in the presentation on who the donor was, so that we can rightly show them appreciation in that. And tonight, as it's been said, with the one particular agenda item with regard to Watermark, yes, our community, as Mr. Fairborn has said, we feed off each other in our school district and the city. The growth between the two. When we talk to different people, when I talk to different people about what brought them to Raymore and what keeps them in Raymore, and our own citizen surveys has told them it's our safety, it's our parks, it's the feeling of community in the school district. We're victims of our success. So as we grow, as the school district grows, we have this dilemma that we have, in how do we do that and how we manage that. As Mr. Holman said, when I first ran and campaigned, that was one of the things, was my thing, was strategic growth, and we manage how we grow, and not just take every shiny object that comes. As Mr. Cataract has said, I believe the property has been sitting for years, and one that was considered was a storage unit, I believe. That would not have been a good look over there, given what we're trying to do at the pork chop, as we call it, that particular parcel of land. So yes, we are, and as I was telling my colleague, some of the visions that we have for that commercial area, and we're being very purposeful in what we consider in that area, because our residents has told us in every citizen survey that we need more retail. We want more opportunities for restaurant options other than a burger place, other than a fast food, other than, so that comes with these varying things that we're doing tonight that we've considered and others. So we appreciate the commentary, we appreciate the information, and as the mayor said, we don't take it lightly. We take it very seriously, and we have the long-range view of what our actions today, just as the actions of council members and mayors before us, have made those hard decisions to allow us to enjoy the growth that we see today, because the things we do today and the decisions that we make tonight affect 20 years from now. And so we're trying to make the best decision that we can with the information that we have to support everybody in our community. So again, thank you to staff, for all your hard work. Ms. Dugwad, artfully said, this is a lot of heavy lifting and reading in the weeds, because we're laymen at this, and trying to decipher and understand the numbers takes quite a few conversations. And Mr. Freeborn and staff does an excellent job of educating us on this, so that we can make an informed decision and make the best decision that we can for the community. So again, thank you to staff, and thank you for the time, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Ms. Will Scherzer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with basically everything that has been said here. I do want to thank the park staff and the Optimist Club for putting together such a successful event, and I think that it is extremely exciting that there were so many participants at the Mud Run. It's just absolutely outstanding for the amount of donations that came in for the Hawks Ridge Nest. I think that that's just absolutely amazing. So I also wanted to say that I hope Ms. Hill feels better soon. So thank you very much.
Mr. Circo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, going back to Mr. Mustaine, yes, you did a great job. You gave us some great news that we're going to hear more about. I think we need to be due diligent, keep on pushing for more events, whatever we can do for that park, for the Hawk Nest, to keep on raising money, to keep that money coming in with a high cost today so you can see your vision grow and be there come next year. That's what you said you wanted there, and with that, it looks like it's going to be close and we can get that done. I really believe the city and the people here, and with different, what we might do on different charity events, whatever we do in the future, we'll get that done. And that's going to be nice. That's what everybody wants. They want to see that. So kudos to you, Mr. Mustaine, all the work you're doing, all behind the scenes, and your people. That's very important. I also chime in on the council. We don't always agree 8-0. We go 7-1, 6-2, but that's what we're here. We do our due diligence on Monday nights on work sessions. We work through things. We were elected to vote what we believe in for the people, not as a group. We have to agree or disagree. So we don't always agree, and we appreciate and respect that no matter which way it is. I think it's a great council that does that. It means they actually have different values or views and a certain election or a vote here that they vote no or yes, and that's important that the people see that we aren't all diverse on one, all or nothing. We have our own opinions and a diversity. Thanks to the city. The city does a fabulous job. Mr. Gress, you're out there beating the bushes. You're always working hard. I hear so many comments for you from the chamber and from people, business owners, that you go out and see and do things with. Your name is getting very popular in the city as an ED, and people respect because you go out there and you show that the city cares, not only for what we're trying to bring in, but for what we have to maintain it. And basically that's a function of the Chamber of Commerce, to grow businesses, maintain the ones you have while we grow new. So you're doing a great job on that. We thank you for that, the city and all the work you did here. I mean, all the numbers you put together, the school board, Mr. Slagle, you guys do a fantastic job. We're working together the best we can, and we're always looking today for what we can do tomorrow. Today, what we're doing today, we're not looking for next year or the year after. We're looking for the next 10 or 20 years, and that should be the vision of a city, of a council, and the business and the city management. What are we going to be in 20 years? Because you need to start projecting that now. You work today so you can have that into the future. You can have your balanced budgets. You can have your money for your roads. You got to do it now. You can't do it 1 year at a time. You get way behind the curve and you never catch up. So the city's doing a great job. School board's doing a good job. Mr. Mustaine, you're fantastic. You and your crew. Council, thank you very much. I appreciate being on this council. It's a very great council to be on. Mr. Mayor, you're a great mayor to have here too, Mr. Mayor. You're a good mayor.
Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could push this button without turning it off again. I am going to employ some wisdom that my wife and my dad would tell me, that this is my part-time job, even though it's my full-time commitment to the voters. Because I work for the school district since the 90s, I'm not going to say a whole lot about that, just because it's the smart thing to do. But I do have, you can tell I have a lot to say, but I won't. But I do want to say that this morning at 6:45, we drove down Lakeshore, and at 3:15 or 3:25, it was completely done. In the morning, it was just, it was a mess. And then by the end of the day, and my daughter said, "How did they do this road so fast? I didn't even notice that." And I don't know how she didn't notice they weren't doing construction, but she was very impressed that the road looked so good, even though it looked terrible in the morning. So she learned something, I guess, there. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Hard to follow there, I'm telling you. Dr. Slagle, thank you very much for your input this evening. I know you come from a city planning background, and so you get it, and you were probably get it as much as anybody on staff here about the direction that this board took tonight and why they did it. And but I appreciate the school board's position as well. I just wish they had a little bit better, a 10,000 foot rather than a 1,000 foot level view of what we're attempting to do here. When I first decided to run for mayor, Mrs. Hubach was still around. And one of the things that she said to me that stuck with me ever since we first talked about me running for office was that she said, "Chris, we need somebody with vision." And she says, "You got a good start with some of the council members that you have." And I feel like now we've got a great staff and a great council that does provide that vision for the city. We've done a great job with putting together our community conversations, following up on that with strategic planning that's necessary for us to move forward, knowing what the citizens of our community want us to do. And I think we've done that. I think we've provided a great vision for the path forward, and I'm excited to be a part of that and part of this team. Thank you all for your insight tonight on this, as Ms. Abdelgawad said, a very weighty issue. It is a very weighty issue as we move forward. And Mr. Berenson, I hope we're right too. So I believe we are. And so I think that the council and the staff have done a great job of pushing this item forward. Even though this is one small item, it is huge in the eyes of many who feel like we may have stepped on the toes of the school board. I don't think we have. I think we've actually kind of set a path of conservative leadership that will help us even go forward more successfully. With that, I really don't have anything else to add. There's no reason to go into executive session. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Townsend.
Move that we're adjourned from the regular city council meeting for August the 23rd.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion, sir.
Motion's been made and seconded to adjourn this meeting. All those in favor? It's unanimous. We're adjourned. Thank you all.